Before we hear our keynote address this morning from Father Katsouros, I'd like to take a moment to share some thoughts about our 2022 Arrupe Lecture Series. Our theme this year is education. Education in the many ways it is somehow denied or impeded for too many people in our country and our world. And it calls us to look far beyond our everyday experiences here at Prep. This year's theme asks us to consider an issue that also unfortunately has too often been ignored, or worse, used as a cudgel in a partisan political debate that further denies and delays meaningful work towards solving the problems of access to quality education for all people in our country and in our world. Throughout this past month, we've examined many issues in a rational, reasoned, and empathetic manner that calls to the fore everything that we hope for as members of a Jesuit high school community. Our activities and sessions have offered us the gift of different perspectives and ideas. Some of them may have been consoling, some of them challenging, but all of them a blessing. With past themes such as mass incarceration in the United States, environmental justice, the rights of the worker, immigration, or urban violence, it was always possible to ask, what does this have to do with us here at Prep today? It's even harder to imagine and appreciate the seriousness of the topic of education, given all of the good things that happen for us here at Prep every day. It takes time and effort to see the deeper connections that so often elude us in civic and religious discussions when we don't take the time to look at our world through the lens of the Gospels. The prescient words of Dr. Martin Luther King can point our moral compass, I think, in the right direction today. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, he wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." I hope that you've been called many times in your time as a Prep student and teacher, inside and outside of the classroom, to step back and to reflect on the role that you are playing in your own learning and teaching in the classroom and service projects as a retreat participant. Reflection is one of the great gifts of a Jesuit education, and my hope is that this year's Arrupe Lecture Series will bring all of us to reflect more deeply on the Gospel's call to justice for all of God's people. In the early 1970s, at a time of great uncertainty in the world in general and in Jesuit education in particular, Father Pedro Arrupe, who was then the worldwide leader of the Jesuits, the man whose example has inspired this lecture series, he challenged the alumni of Jesuit high schools to be men and women for others. And today, 5 decades later, we strive at St. Peter's Prep and at Jesuit high schools throughout the country and around the world to give meaning to his words as we go about our everyday lives. As students and teachers and staff at a Jesuit high school, we are called to forge a different path, one that's informed by our intellect, spurred on by our openness, formed by our faith, inspired by our love, and strengthened by our commitment to doing justice. Today, we are lucky to have with us an old friend of Prep, Father Steve Katsouros of the Society of Jesus. For close to 40 years, he has been active in education as a teacher and administrator, including here at Prep about 20 years ago. His service has included assignments at the Nativity Mission Center on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, Loyola School, the University of San Francisco, and at Loyola University of Chicago, where he was the founding dean and the executive director of Arrupe College, the first Jesuit community college. And he currently serves as the president and CEO of the Come to Believe Foundation, a network that seeks to replicate the Arrupe College model in higher ed across the United States, making college accessible to a diverse population of students, many of whom are the first in their families to pursue higher ed. So as we mark this year's keynote address of the 2022 Arrupe Lecture Series and listen to our speaker today, Father Katsouros, Let us continue in the challenging spirit of Pedro Arrupe to find opportunities to be men and women for and with others wherever our lives may lead us. I'd like to call forth Father Katsouros as we get started with our lecture. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. All right. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be back at 144 Grand Street. As Mr. D'Angelo said, I was here 1998 to 2002. Great community of students and their families, staff and faculty and alumni. And, certainly many good times here. Great in terms of my own work, working in the Dean of Students office and then later on in the Development office. Extraordinary to be here during 9/11. And so really getting through that experience because of an amazing community here, community of great people. And some of my former colleagues are still here, which is such a blessing for St. Peter's. So I want to emphasize that notion of community. And I think that I hope you know, students, that you are part of, obviously this legacy of St. Peter's Prep. But right now, in the here and now, during your years here, I really hope and pray that you too are experiencing community as I did at St. Peter's Prep so long ago. I want to talk a little bit about my work in terms of another kind of community colleges, and then eventually Arrupe College. So community colleges, of course, are two-year colleges, and students who go to community colleges get associate degrees. They get two-year degrees. 40% of students who are in college right now in the United States are students in community colleges, 40%. And 70% of those students are women and men of color. So I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you. All right. Hudson Community College here in Hudson County Community College, 3% of the students who go there graduate in 2 years. 3% in 2 years for the two-year degree. Essex Community College over in the Newark area, 2% of the students who go to Essex Community College get their two-year degree in 2 years' time. 2%. Nationally, 13% of those students who go to community colleges get their associate degrees in 2 years' time. My friends, this is a big problem. Community colleges, not all of them, face a lot of challenges. They're often under-resourced, faculty and staff are overwhelmed, and students aren't graduating. We try to come up with a big solution for this big problem. So, Mr. D'Angelo just talked about Father Arrupe. One of his successors, Father Nicolas, met with all the presidents of the Jesuit universities back in 2013. At that time, there were 28 Jesuit universities. So obviously, this is, I think, 18 of their logos. You see St. Peter's University up there, and several others. And Father Nicolas said to the Jesuit presidents of these universities, congratulations, you have great schools. You have amazing universities. These are success stories. However, what are you doing for students from low-income backgrounds? Are they going to your universities? They can't afford to go there. Can you provide them with scholarships or financial aid? Once they get there, are they successful? Do they graduate from your universities? What are you doing for folks on the margins? So it was a real challenge to the presidents of these different Jesuit universities. So one of those universities, one of the presidents who heard about it, was at Loyola University Chicago. So Sister Jean thinks that she's the president of Loyola University Chicago. She's the nun who's 102 years old, who's a big champion of the basketball team there. Loyola Chicago, right on Lake Michigan, my alma mater, and a place where I worked for several years just recently. So the president of Loyola University Chicago was a Jesuit at that time, Father Garanzini, and he said, what would happen at Loyola Chicago if we started a community college, a 2-year college, and it was designed for the first ones in their families to go to school, first-generation students. And it was designed for students whose grades in high school were between B- and C-. Their GPAs were 2.5, 2.7, 2.8. Now, Loyola Chicago is a competitive, selective university. The average GPA coming in from high school is a 3.7, and the average ACT is like a 27 or 28. So this would be a different kind of student profile for Loyola that Father Garanzini was thinking of. And then he said, what if we designed a college for Pell-eligible students? So the Pell Grant. If your expected family contribution is under $6,000, then you could be Pell-eligible. So again, folks from lower income backgrounds, first gen, B- to C-, and Pell eligible. So what if we designed a college for these kinds of students, and we named it after Father Arrupe, for whom this lecture is named, the Jesuit who calls us to be men for others. Father Garanzini was trying to address a big problem in the city of Chicago. So in Chicago, there are 7 community colleges or city colleges. 7% of the students who go to those colleges graduate in 2 years. 13% graduate in 3 years. 4% get their, 21% get their 2-year degree in 4 years' time. Again, a big problem. Not enough students are getting across the finish line. So I moved to Chicago to start Arrupe College at Loyola University Chicago back in 2014. So the student profile, 97% of our students are women and men of color. 80% of our students are Pell eligible. 20% of our students are undocumented. And this is a sample of some of our undocumented students who are part of an organization called the Dream.us. So how do we address this need of these students? All right, this is a commuter school. That keeps the costs down. Remember, these students are coming from low wealth backgrounds, so they can't afford to live on campus. But we start with this Loyola University Retreat and Ecology campus, a residential orientation program in the summer. And that's where community begins to happen for these students. We try to address food insecurity that some of our students, not all, but some of our students experience. And so we built a student commons for them to hang out and to get a breakfast and lunch every day that we are in session. We try to address students' technology needs, and so every student gets a laptop. We try to address students' mental health needs, issues with depression or anxiety, by having social workers and other student success programs. And this is something that I learned. I had really not worked in community colleges before. So in community colleges in New Jersey, New York, Chicago, the academic advisors have over 500 advisees for commuters, for first-gen students, for people who are working, for people with kids, for people with family obligations. Guess what? You never see your advisor because you're not around a whole lot. And so things fall through the cracks. So our faculty members, besides teaching philosophy and physics and theology and computer science and English and all the rest, they also serve as academic advisors. They don't have 500 advisees, they have 20. We also have a college transfer program. So we found, we're a 2-year college, and we found that a lot of our students didn't want to stop at 2 years. They wanted to go on. They wanted to figure out where to go. And so maybe some of you have already done this with staff from prep or with your families. Go on college tours, look at schools in the Northeast or beyond. Well, we would do the same thing for our students. We would have graduate support programs for our students, like the Black Men for Success program for our African American male students. I know that you all have the Emmaus retreat here. I've been on several Emmaus retreats when I was working here. We also had retreats for our students. We also had, before COVID, a study abroad program where we would take the students to Spain, to the places where St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, who was Spanish, was from the Basque area, where he was. And these students would earn credit and study in northern Spain. We found that all of these things, computers and food and college transfer, et cetera, were really important. But number one, in terms of getting students across the finish line, is something that I think all of you experience here. I hope you do. And that's community. That is what I experienced when I was here at Prep as someone who was on the payroll as an employee, and I hope that that's what you experience here as part of Jesuit education here in Jersey City. We really work on all of our students feeling like they belong. So, if you go to school, whether it's a high school or a college or a university, and you feel like you don't belong there, what happens? It's very hard for you to persist, to succeed, and to complete. You're looking to transfer. If you're a college student, you're looking to drop out. And then for some students, let's say you're a student of color, you're the first one in your family to go to school, you perceive that everyone else in your school is white, and you think that they're all smarter than you are and they're richer than you are. It's also really hard for you to feel like you belong. So we work on a culture of belonging for our students. So what are the results? Well, this is an academic convocation where so many students are recognized. Students who were 2.5, 2.7, 2.8 in terms of GPAs for high school, now getting 3.5s, really finding that they love their classes, they love this professor, they love this classroom discussion, and they excel academically. Over 50% of our students complete their associate degree in 2 years. Not 2%, not 3%, not 7%, not 13%. Over 50% complete their associate degree in 2 years' time. That's the most recent graduation at Arrupe College. 75% of the students report completing 61 credits with us with no debt. As you're anticipating college, I'm sure you're looking at, oh God, I'm going to have to take out student loans, and how will I finance this? And for a lot of our students, that would bury them. And then particularly, think about this. If you're a student, you take out a lot of loans, so you're in debt, and then you don't finish the degree. So, you're O for everything. So we really work hard for our students not to incur debt, and the average amount of debt for our students, the 25% who have debt, is about $1,400. Over 80% of our students go on to 4-year colleges and universities. Now, nationally, 14% of those students who start community college get their bachelor's degrees in 6 years' time. 14%, that's kind of a low number. For us, over 80% complete their bachelor's degrees in 5 years' time. They go to local schools in Chicago like Dominican University, great school on the west side. They go to national schools like Georgetown University or the University of Wisconsin in Madison. They go to schools this used to be very popular here when I was working at St. Peter's. They go to Loyola in Baltimore, Loyola, Maryland for school. I just had a little reunion last month in Chicago with some of our graduates. So these are students who went to Loyola, they're at Northwestern, they're in business, they're getting masters in higher education, they're in startups. These are students who are just really kind of a few years older than some of you seniors who have graduated. And, many of them thought, I would never go to Northwestern or complete a degree at Loyola. So these are, like you, recipients of Jesuit education, leaders in Jesuit secondary ed. All right. So I wrote a book several years ago. I'm not here to sell it, don't worry. It's called Come to Believe. And that's a line from the Gospel of St. John. You know, Martha comes to believe in Jesus. Peter comes to believe in Jesus. Other people come to believe in Jesus. I've always loved that line because it means, all right, these people who knew Jesus, who worked with Jesus, who lived with Jesus, who loved Jesus, you know, they didn't get who Jesus was. They didn't understand who he was. It was gradual. It was a process. It was a journey for them. They came to believe in who Jesus was. So for many of our students, they come to Arrupe College not knowing, well, I like this. Am I cut out for college? No one in my family has ever gone to college before. Can I handle this? And then it was a professor who really influenced them, or a class that they loved, or an extracurricular that they really enjoyed. And they came to believe, God, I can do this. I like being an undergrad. I like being at a competitive, selective university. I can be successful here. I'm finding community here. I belong here. And two of our graduates now work with me at Come to Believe, the foundation and network that Mr. D'Angelo mentioned. So what I'm working on now, I live in New York, and I'm talking to other universities around the country about, you know, maybe starting an Arrupe College at their university, because as we can see, you know, community colleges are really struggling, and 40% of the student population in higher ed are enrolled in community colleges. They need help, and we think that our model can help them. So this is one student's take on her experience at Arrupe. I came to Arrupe for the affordability. I stay at Arrupe for the sense of community and for the opportunity. So in our own little way in Chicago, we tried to address a big problem with a big solution, and we did it in the name of Father Arrupe. So listen, I would say to you, men of St. Peter's Prep, you know, I hope that your education here at St. Peter's is helping you to address, you know, problems large and small in your life. And obviously your goal here is to get a great education, and this is a college prep, obviously, so you want to go on and go to a university that is a good fit for you, where you feel like you belong and where you can be successful. And you know, then you go on and you get a good job and you give back to prep and you become leaders in your community. I mean, that's kind of the goal. But I also hope that, you know, you're beginning to think of other problems that are not just about yourself, that may impact you and your family, but that are also impacting your community, the communities where you come from, your cities, the cities that you're going to be living in 5, 10 years from now. How will you be part of a big solution to a big problem? You know, the Jesuits talk about these things called the UAPs. Maybe you've heard about them before, because it's not just the Jesuits, but all of us involved in Jesuit education. So, you know, our leadership in Rome wants us to be focused on some big problems and some big issues: caring for the earth, the environment. Also, you know, developing a spirituality, having a relationship with God, walking with people on the margins, being with poor people, all right? And then finally, the fourth one is accompanying young people. That's what happens here day in, day out at St. Peter's Prep. And it happens successfully because of the sense of community and because of people who feel like they belong here. So Doug Eddard, right, from the Peacocks, he was quoted in the New York Times before the Purdue game as saying, "We feel like we belong." Well, you know, not for nothing, but they were pretty successful, right? They had a good run because he and his teammates felt like they belonged. That belonging is critical. I would kind of challenge you, too, here to think about, all right, how do you belong here? Do you belong? If you don't, talk to somebody about it. If there are other people, you know, in your classes, in your class, who feel like they don't belong, find out why. How come people aren't belonging here? You know, Mr. D'Angelo talked about Jesuit education. I was lucky enough to be a president of a high school in Manhattan called Loyola, and I do a lot of weddings now. So this, you know, couple who got married, they were classmates together, class of '06. And so, you know, they had a little class reunion. And so, it was great to be with them, and they're successful and fun, and doing their baptizing their kids and all of that. So these are products of Jesuit education, like you are. Also, these young people that I worked with in the community college at Arrupe College at Loyola Chicago, they are products of Jesuit education, as will you be products of Jesuit education here at St. Peter's Prep, just like students at the two-year college at Arrupe College. So lastly, this painting, all right, this artist, Janet McKenzie, I asked her to do this painting of what we call Jesus of Arrupe College. It hangs in the lobby of the college in Chicago. So basically I said, Janet, can you do a painting of Jesus as a college student? Somebody who's like 18 or 19 years old. My administrative assistant sent Janet photos of all of our students, so that she could get a sense of what the students look like. And, when this came back, I said to the students at Arrupe, I said, look, the Jesuits talk about finding God in all things. And I said, we find God in you. And so this represents that, how, you take on the image of God, or in this case, the image of Jesus. So right away, the students were saying, now, is that me, and is that my girlfriend, and is that my best friend? And they were trying to figure out who they were in the particular painting. I know that, I certainly found God here during my years at St. Peter's Prep, by and large in the students. So I hope that you're finding God in your experience here, and I also hope that you find God in your experience of being a student in Jesuit education, which really calls you to kind of identify problems in your life, problems in your friends' lives, problems at your school, but then big problems. What are the big problems? How do you identify the big problems? And does your time here at Prep, do the teachers, the faculty, the staff, do they influence how you go about solving those problems? How will you be part of the big solution? There you have it. Thanks very much, and I'm happy to take questions now.